Israel's prime minister says he does not want to occupy Gaza as the military agrees to daily humanitarian pauses to get aid to the northern part of the enclave.
Protesters clash with police in Madrid after confirmation of a coalition deal between Spain's Socialist Party and Catalan separatists. The European Parliament and member states reach an agreement on a controversial biodiversity bill.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu claims his country does not intend to occupy or govern the Gaza Strip after its war on the Palestinian enclave is over, but instead asserted in an interview with US TV channel Fox News this country wants to radically reshape it. This comes a few hours after Israel agreed to provide daily humanitarian pauses in northern Gaza. More than 10,800 Palestinians, including more than 4,400 children, have died in Gaza since the war began. Earlier on Thursday, a representative from Islamic Jihad said the group is ready to release 2 Israeli hostages, a 77-year-old woman and a 12-year-old boy, for humanitarian reasons. Meanwhile, Yemen's Houthi rebels said they fired a batch of ballistic missiles towards Israeli targets. In turn, Israel said the drone exploded in the yard of a house in Elet, while a missile was intercepted before reaching the country's airspace. In the occupied West Bank, the situation is becoming more and more tense. Israeli forces commenced a several-hours-long raid in Jenin refugee camp, which killed at least 14 Palestinians and wounded 20. According to UN data, this was the deadliest raid on the camp since 2005. Europe remembers the November pogroms, also known as the Night of Broken Glass, when some 85 years ago, the Nazis terrorized Jews throughout Germany and Austria. During the pogroms, the Nazis killed at least 91 people, vandalized 7,500 Jewish businesses, and burnt more than 1,400 synagogues. The anniversary comes as Germany is seeing a sharp rise in anti-Semitism following the Israel-Hamas war.
We are scared that something will happen to us. We never know. And the anti-Semitism has risen with the time, with the conflict. But we don't fear. We have no fear of going out with the kippot. We have no fear of going out with the tzitzit and with the flag and representing our country, our society, our people, our nation.
Other countries in Europe, such as the Netherlands, Denmark, and UK, organized their own marches and memorials. In London, King Charles III met a group of former refugees who had come to the UK as children to escape Nazi Germany. They were part of the Kindertransport scheme that saved more than 10,000 Jewish children from the Nazis and was started immediately after the Night of Broken Glass.
Violence on the streets of central Madrid. It's the 7th night protesters have rallied outside the Socialist Party headquarters. They're angry about plans by acting Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez to form a coalition government with the Catalan Separatist Party and a potential amnesty for its leader.
Estos acuerdos de la vergüenza no resuelven ningún problema, sino que los agravan todos. Estamos hablando de ceder un chantaje.
Se ha puesto en marcha en el día de hoy definitivamente el golpe contra la nación, contra la democracia y contra la ley. Y por lo tanto comienza un periodo negro en la historia de España.
The coalition deal with Catalonia's separatist leader Carles Puigdemont was reached on Thursday. The Socialists were runners-up in July's general election behind the main Conservative Party, but better placed to forming a government alliance. The agreement increases Sanchez's chances of retaining power.
Far-right politician Alejo Vidal-Quadras has been shot amid tensions in Spain over negotiations for a left-wing government. The 78-year-old politician and former president of the Catalan Popular Party was shot in the face and taken to hospital in a conscious state. The emergency services reported he had a gunshot wound to the jaw area with an entry and exit hole. The alleged perpetrator, who was travelling on a motorbike and wearing a helmet, fled the scene. He's being tracked down by police. Vidal-Quadras is one of the founding members of the far-right party Vox, currently the third largest force in the lower house of Spanish Parliament.
So we have to continue to work
as governments throughout the world race to regulate artificial intelligence, focus on international cooperation, particularly with China, is intensifying. It was a key topic at Euronews' International AI Summit in Brussels this week, with many people saying it could prove difficult to cooperate with Beijing on AI standards.
I think it's fair to say that the geopolitical reality is not very conducive to deep, meaningful cooperation. There is a very much escalating tech war between the US and China. There's tremendous race for technological supremacy. There's concern who is the economic power, the technological power, the geopolitical power. And there's also vast ideological differences. So it is hard to see the US and the EU to agree with China in particularly meaningful substantive rules around AI.
The explosion of interest in artificial intelligence could not have come at a more awkward time, given the global effort needed to work together on setting safety standards. But there is some hope amid all the geopolitical tension. Last week saw the historic Bletchley Declaration in the UK, where the US and China both signed an agreement on AI safety. There's also optimism in the business-to-business area.
I'm very optimistic when it comes to what can be done between companies, between engineers. Chinese companies are already playing a really active role. As long as these conversations can continue and even maybe be facilitated by governments, despite the geopolitical tensions, I think there will be progress going forward.
But for the MEP leading the charge on the EU's AI Act, cooperation with China on the technology should for now be secondary. First, the collective West needs to get its own house in order.
Because it is the same when addressing governance at a global stage, when addressing standards at a global stage, there is an inevitable dialogue with China. But what I've always said is that first and foremost, we have to make sure that we are first aligned. Us, the democracies that understand technology in the same way and its role in society, we have to first get ourselves as convergent as we can, as aligned as we can, and then have a proper conversation with China to make sure that we can address as many as the other, let's say, bigger risks, including geopolitical risks, in a framework that also includes them.
Next week could see another historic moment in the West cooperation with Beijing. US President Joe Biden will likely meet with Chinese leader Xi Jinping, which could lay the groundwork for future cooperation on artificial intelligence. Christopher Pitchers, Euronews, Brussels.
The European Parliament and EU member states have reached an agreement on a biodiversity bill aimed at protecting and restoring fragile habitats. The nature restoration law requires member states to implement measures to restore at least 20% of land and marine areas by 2030 and all damaged ecosystems by 2050. Critics say the plan doesn't go far enough to tackle Europe's biodiversity challenges. Some MEPs argued it would harm Europe's food production and threaten livelihoods.
The first vaccine against chikungunya developed by the European Valneva Group has arrived. The US has approved the vaccine for people over the age of 18 who are at a higher risk of exposure to the virus. Chikungunya, transmitted to humans by infected mosquitoes, causes a sudden onset of fever and severe joint pain that can last for months, but deaths are rare. The disease occurs mainly in tropical regions, especially in Africa, Southeast Asia and parts of the Americas. Doctors in the US have performed the world's first transplant of the entire eyeball. Stem cells from the patient's own bone marrow were used during the operation on a 46-year-old man who lost his sight in his left eye in a work-related accident. Although the operation was hailed a success, the patient's vision was not restored and the process may be just cosmetic. Transplants of the cornea are common to treat certain types of vision loss, but transplanting the whole eye is thought to be a major step forward in the bid to cure blindness.
Outside one of Tokyo's main train stations is a statue representing a centuries-long tale of doggy devotion. Our main hero, named Hachiko, was born 100 years ago this week and is beloved by many in Japan for his devotion to his best friend, Hidesaburo Uno. As legend goes, the faithful dog waited outside the station for his owner to come home every day. But one day, Uno died unexpectedly, and no one was able to tell Hachiko the bad news. A statue now sits on the spot where he spent the next 10 years, faithfully waiting for his return. Robert De Niro's Canal Productions is set to pay the actor's former assistant $1.2 million, or 1.1 million euros. A New York court has ruled that De Niro's company had been engaged in gender discrimination and retaliation against Graham Chase Robinson. In her lawsuit, Robinson argued that before she quit in April 2019, De Niro and his girlfriend teamed up against her to turn a job she once loved into a nightmare. The money awarded by the court will come as two payments of around 591,000 euros. De Niro was not personally found liable for the abuse.
Acclaimed Italian actor Monica Bellucci has been recognised for her 30-year contribution to the film industry. The Irreversible and Passion of the Christ star accepted the Golden Alexander Award at the 64th Thessaloniki Film Festival in Greece. There was a special screening of Giuseppe Tornatore's erotic comedy drama Milena, in which Bellucci played the lead role.
I'm so grateful to this amazing artist, Maria Callas, because I have to say that, as I say all the time, what really moved me to this project is the duality of Maria Callas, because she was a diva, a divinity, a donna's immense talent, and at the same time she was a woman with a simple heart.
The former model turned actor has featured in comedies, dramas and historical films in various languages. At the age of 59, Bellucci continues to model for Dior and Dolce & Gabbana. She recently hinted at adding director to her list of credits.